morning. So today on our podcast we have Lottie Alves from the Nature Friendly Farming Network. We are at the Apricot Centre near Devon, and it is quite a rainy day but quite sunny as well, so it should be a good farm walk that we're having. So Lottie, could you introduce yourself today?
Yeah, so you mentioned that I work for the Nature Friendly Farming Network, so I'm our England manager. So basically, I work with our England steering group, which is all made up of farmers across England, different types, different sizes of farm, all the way from kind of smallholders up to big estates. And I basically help them deliver our England business plan. So that includes doing a lot of advocacy and policy work, so getting them in front of MPs and into Parliament, and also the other side of it is doing a lot of farmer knowledge exchange. So yeah, doing events such as this one, although not strictly speaking involved in the kind of planning of this one, but we do similar events, farm walks and talks, webinars, podcast episodes, and also plenty of kind of case studies as well. So I help collating a lot of that as well. Brilliant. And organising those events.
Okay, well then just about the Nature Friendly Farming Network. I suppose it's in the name, but could you tell me a bit about like your aims and objectives as an organisation?
Yeah, so our founder, Martin, he set up the network because he didn't feel that there was really any other kind of farming organisation that was really championing the views of nature-friendly farmers in particular. So he wanted to kind of set something up to provide a bit of a community for those farmers. It's not to say that farmers that aren't in the network aren't also nature-friendly, yes. But he wanted to champion those views at a kind of policy level as well and make sure that their views were heard. So the network was set up. So as the name suggests, we are a collection of different farmers, all who have that kind of aim that nature and food production aren't at odds against each other, that they actually work together, and the only way you can kind of create a sustainable farm is if you take the kind of environmental conservation and management into practices on your farm.
Yeah, but also do it in a way that doesn't compromise like the business side of things.
Yeah.
So it's farming with nature, not for nature, but
no,
you're in a way.
Yeah, it's the combination of the two. So you're not sacrificing the actual business, and in some cases actually the business is more profitable once you kind of change to the kind of managing for nature as well as the food production. So it's about finding that balance between the two and making the farm business sustainable as a whole overall. So that was the kind of real aim, and it was basically to help farmers actually understand how they can do that as well, because I think there's a lot of new information that's coming out, including all of the stuff on the new agri-environment schemes, and so there wasn't that much information out there, and it was just trying to use key farmers as good examples and to kind of help other kind of peer-to-peer learning, help each other along.
It really is brilliant, because I guess farmers, we learn from each other. Yes. And it's that science, the new, there's so much information and noise. You sort of need an organisation to break it down, have farm walks and workshops, podcast episodes, to really communicate that. No, that's perfect. Well, the podcast is all about functional biodiversity. In our first episode, we had Martha Fox from QUB talk about her experiences with hoverfly and really how you can farm in a way that protects them and all the benefits that they have. So I suppose a good question maybe to ask, I asked Martha the same thing, but maybe it would be good to recap. What is your definition of functional biodiversity?
I guess functional biodiversity, I really liked Martha's definition as well, but it's basically creating or making sure that the ecosystem as a whole on farm is working together and is healthy and sustainable. So you're kind of creating an environment where everything works together, from the fungi within the soil all the way through to kind of your bird species that are feeding on the worms in the soil. So it's kind of making that work for the farm as well, so that actually what you've got in the hedgerows, so your beneficial insects are actually helping out on farm to maybe predate some of the pest species that you find, but also to kind of act as or trying to remove the impact that might be provided by weed species, or might be green bridges for disease. So it's trying to kind of create a really healthy ecosystem so that your crop species or your farm as a whole is a lot more resilient to kind of weather and disease outbreaks, pest outbreaks, anything like that. So it's just creating a functioning ecosystem that
for resiliency, it works for the farmer, it works for nature, and all these things in one interconnected space.
Yes.
Okay, well maybe just to pick up on that then, could you give like a couple of like examples maybe throughout your work on like different ways that you can farm to reduce you know, the chemicals that you need, pesticides? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can do that. So what I mean, I used to work as an agronomist as well, so I've got a bit of a background of kind of working with farmers to help reduce their reliance on chemical or fertiliser inputs as well. So I think the main thing is to actually look at the farm system as a whole, because nothing works in isolation. So we would do kind of whole farm planning, and that's kind of one of the approaches that as the Nature Friendly Farming Network we advise farmers to take, is to think about their whole farm system rather than kind of silos of so you might be, as I said, thinking about your hedgerows, but what impact do the hedgerows then have on your crop or your livestock? So vice versa. But I guess from a cropping point of view, it'd be kind of doing an integrated pest management plan and thinking about the different stages that get you all the way from kind of the initial planning stage all the way up to, if you have to, using a chemical. And so it's working out different strategies to avoid using that chemical at the end goal. So it'd be kind of the initial planning of what type of varieties you might be putting in, and the way you manage your soil before that to increase kind of biological activity in the soil, to reduce kind of disease burden and weed seeds and things like that, all the way through to selecting varieties that are more tolerant to pest attack or disease attack. Then it's thinking about the types of kind of cultural control you can do. So is it, are you kind of cultivating in between the rows for weeds rather than using a herbicide? And then it's thinking about kind of monitoring what you have coming into the crop as well. So putting up traps for pest species, so you can put sticky traps up, pheromone traps, and then kind of monitoring that to work out, well, actually, are we even at a threshold level where we might need to spray? No, we're not. So, and kind of adding bits around the outside of the field as well to kind of encourage those beneficials in. So that might be, you know, having tusky grasses along the edge, maybe might be putting more beetle banks in. It's all of these different strategies to try and encourage the things that you want there and discourage the things that you don't want in there. And bearing in mind that throughout all of that you will likely have some disease or pest coming in. It's just trying to make the plants as healthy as possible.
Okay, and I suppose that you're not ruling out pesticides and chemicals. You're literally saying we're going to farm in a way that can reduce them as much as possible, but still making sure they're healthy. If you need them, use them if you need.
Yeah, so it's a bit like trying to, I always think of it as, or I used to describe it as, if you've got a cold, if your immune system is very healthy already because you're taking all the right vitamins, you're eating a healthy diet, you're exercising to the right amount, it's basically treating your plant or your crop of grass as a kind of trying to protect them and give them the best possible start in life so that they're very healthy anyway, so they're more resilient against something that is coming into the crop. So they might have a harder kind of cell wall, so it's harder for insect mouth parts to break through. It's also then stops them from getting disease, and if you have a really strong kind of fungal network underneath, they can kind of alert each other to the fact that another plant next to them is being attacked, and they can then regulate their own kind of plant version of an immune response.
And just on that, so like a lot of stuff happens underneath the soil, like the fungi network is so important. What's a good indicator of above ground of what's going on below the ground, like for you as like an agronomist?
Yeah, I think it's how well the crop is looking, really. I mean, it's also I always think what you really need to do is actually dig into your soil and have a look, have a kind of break it up. Has it got kind of big chunks? Is it really clumpy as you pull it apart? Are there very sheer edges? Does it crumble nice? Has it got good friability? Does it smell nice?
Because there's a word for that. There's a word for the smelling of the earth.
Yeah, but that it doesn't smell kind of sulphurous, because that's a really good indicator that it's very anaerobic. So you want this kind of aerobic, friable soil, and you'll know then that underneath, and you want to be kind of having a look at how far the roots are managing to get down. And then on the surface, I mean, you can tell as well as you're walking across the fields. So if you see a patch which is much lower than the other areas of the field, or looks stunted, or just doesn't look like it's doing as well, that's the kind of area that then maybe you need to focus on. Is the kind of soil pH wrong? Has there been some contamination in that area in the past? Is it that there is a pest species there? There's all these sorts of things, but that's a kind of good indicator, or how quickly a crop gets up and away is usually quite a good indicator of how healthy a soil is. I mean, it's not always the case, because sometimes you get, you know, extreme events like waterlogging or very, very high intensity pest pressure. But if the rest of the field is looking all right, or fields around that field are looking okay, and there's one field in particular that's struggling, you might then start to consider, is there something wrong with the soil underneath? And
pH structure, and there's things you can do, like the spade tests and whatnot. Okay, well, just to touch on a few things. So you said about the beetle banks and different types of grasses, and so intercropping to reduce weeds. I suppose just like pick like an example. I suppose I have aphids in my head, because that's probably the well-known ones. But what would you do for, say, a farmer that is struggling with aphids, that maybe doesn't want to use pesticides, but he or she has this problem?
Yeah, then I would suggest kind of increasing kind of flowering margins, tussocky grasses. I would encourage them to put beetle banks in. I'd encourage them to also, because that's basically to encourage a number of different insect species, hoverflies being one of them, but ladybirds, lacewings as well. All of those species predate aphids. I mean, hoverflies I think can eat about 1,000, like one larvae can eat 1,000 aphids, which is very useful. So I think, adding habitat in to encourage those beneficial insects, and putting it at kind of reliable intervals in which that they can move into the crop, because they'll only travel a certain distance from their kind of habitat. So one of our farmers in particular, I know that he puts them at kind of 24 to 30 metre intervals, so it kind of fits with his sprayer. So it just depends what size your sprayer is and what kind of boom widths you've got, but you want to make it work for the farm as well. But adding in those bits of habitat, also thinking about crop species that you're growing, kind of making sure that you're kind of having a good variety in the rotation, so you're not kind of continually growing cereals, for example. Monoculture, so you're kind of building up pest pressure in that way. But it's also thinking about, are there any that are a bit more resistant to aphid pressure in general? You know, I used to work in horticulture, so there were certain types of cabbage that actually just were much better because their skin was thicker, so they couldn't eat them as easily. So it's thinking about things like that as well. So not just the selection of the different crops within the rotation, but the actual varieties of crops that you're growing. I know some of that will depend on market as well, but it's thinking about those sorts of things as well. But it's kind of trying to reduce the favourability to aphids whilst also increasing the favourability for all of their natural predators. And then if you are going to have to spray for aphids, it's also thinking about, can I use a very targeted spray rather than using a very generalist spray, which is also going to knock out all of your beneficial insects too. And not being afraid to see you know, the hoverfly larvae, the ladybird larvae. I know that's difficult.
That might be my next question then. So I suppose it might be difficult for farmers to be able to recognise all of these insects and what's beneficial, what's not. Is there any resources that they could go to for that, or what's a thing that you could help with?
I mean, we have got the guide here actually, which is a practical guide to integrated pest management. We have a digital copy on our website, and we're also running a number of events around the whole of the UK actually, where we're handing these out. But at the back of that's got a good kind of guide with pictures of what the various insect pests look like. AHDB as well really have some really great resources. They have an actual encyclopedia of pest species, and that also includes beneficials and at various different bits of their life stage. So you can actually, when you're out, be looking for ladybird eggs, and you can kind of, it helps you identify them versus, you know, perhaps some species of butterfly that you might not want in your horticultural crops. But it also gives you the kind of larval stage, and it gives you a bit of information about the types of species that they would then predate on. So it's really quite a useful guide, and it gives you kind of some extra knowledge. But there's loads of different resources out there. They're just a couple, but there's lots of different YouTube videos as well.
Helpful.
Also,
go
into more detail too.
Just to see, but the picture, the combination of the guide, which we'll put in the link, I think that would be very helpful. The guide, YouTube. Yeah, there's a lot of resources on YouTube. So would you recommend that for a farmer to?
Yeah, definitely, if they're interested. I mean, I think I loved when I was out field walking having the encyclopedia with me, because if there was ever something that you hadn't seen before, that was a really good thing. I mean, there's also a lot of apps coming out now, like the iNaturalist app. So if you're out and you spot something that you're not quite sure what it is, that would be a great one to use. It's also good because then you're combining that with sort of citizen science. as well. So you're kind of noting that you've spotted that particular species, and it might even be a particular species of bee or something like that as well. It doesn't have to be necessarily a predatory species. It can be anything, or ground beetles, anything like that. There's those sorts of apps which are really useful to collect that data, and I think it's just also useful from a farm point of view to kind of be monitoring where species are, and then you might know, okay, well that one had this particular species in the hedgerow, so, and all of the other hedgerows didn't, so maybe that was something that was encouraging. It just helps you kind of clarify maybe what it is that you're doing that's encouraging that species.
Okay. So my next thing is then, so maybe a lot of farmers listen to this might think, oh, I'm not a botanist, I'm not this level of scientist, but you don't need to be. I suppose that pest management plan, the integrated management plan, that would be a lot of helpful guides in that, and the strategies you put in place that you could work with them on that.
Yeah, so there's what I would say is work with your vet or your agronomist on your plan as well, because they'll be able to give you a lot of advice. There's also, as I say, the kind of the iNaturalist that will have loads of guides. There's also other apps that we've worked with in the past, such as Soil Mentor, which actually has, so if you're looking specifically at soil health as part of this integrated pest management plan, that has loads of tools about how to carry out all the tests yourself. Attend workshops such as this one that we're about to have. That's always really good as well. And there's lots of different kind of, as I said, YouTube videos, podcast episodes, which kind of go into a bit more detail on different things. So you don't need to be an expert at all. You can kind of use resources that are already there to kind of help you identify them, or I think there are even companies that will help come out and do some surveys and can help teach you what you're looking for.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so it's working with the experts to help you have that strategy and put things in place.
Yeah, and they will very quickly learn. You kind of start to notice things a lot as you do it more and more, and you kind of collecting this either bank of details in your iNaturalist app or any of the other apps that you might be using. You kind of collect this knowledge of information, so you do quite quickly get to know,
learn all these things.
Learn all these different things.
Okay, so we're coming very close to the farm walk, which is all about agroforestry today. So we'll wrap up very soon. But is there anything that you can say maybe about a farmer who's thinking, not using chemicals, pesticides, even fertilizers, that are really worried about their profits and maybe reduce yields? Is there any sort of words of encouragement that you could give them?
I think some of the encouragement I would give is that the way we've farmed currently, we're already seeing the impacts that's having when we have these severe weather events. I just have to look at some of our farmers who are kind of practicing these more nature-friendly methods, and their soils are such that they're much more resilient when there is a drought or there is a flood. So there's those sorts of aspects of it. So yes, you may see a slight drop in yield, but you also aren't using the same amount of input, so it's kind of actually profitability can sometimes go up in the long run. In the long run, in the long run, because you're not putting the same amount of inputs in. But I also think it just makes the system more resilient as well for the future planning, and just allowing yourself that kind of bit of leeway then if the weather does turn and you do have a flood or a drought.
And then on that though, in the short term, there will be maybe a drop in yield and a drop in income. Or is there any way like a farmer can subsidise that, maybe with the agro-environmental schemes? Could you maybe touch on that slightly?
Yeah, so a lot of our farmers, that's exactly what they're doing. So there's a lot of particularly, England is the furthest on, I think, in terms of its agro-environment schemes at the moment. But within Elms and the SFI actions, actually there's actions for creating IPM plans, there's actions for creating nutrient management plans, there's also actions for putting in flower-rich margins, bird seed mixes, leaving your land fallow. So there's all these actions which are actually already what a lot of farmers are probably doing without realising, or quite easy things that farmers can add into their system without it maybe taking too much away from what they're already doing. And that just adds a bit of extra income for them. And also just the kind of funding for actually doing an integrated pest management plan is great, because that allows you to kind of either pay somebody else to do it for you, or to actually sit down and have a really good think about it, because whereas it may have been a job in the past. A lot of farms will already be doing a lot of this anyway, because you know, if they're part of an assurance scheme like Red Tractor or Leaf Mark, they will already be doing an integrated pest management plan, so they're already thinking about this. But it's that added value then to the farmer if they're getting paid to do it as well.
And that is important, because look, farming is a business. Farmers care about the environment, but it's ultimate. You have to be able to fund your activities.
You do, yes, yeah.
Well, that's brilliant. Look, thank you very much. So I'm very excited to move on to our agroforestry walk. But it would be really great if our farmer is able to contact you and the Nature Friendly Farming Network for more advice. Yeah.
Yes, they are. Yeah, so we have our Nature Friendly Farming Network website, which I'm sure we can put in the kind of notes of the show, and my email and the emails of the other country managers as well, because we have UK-wide coverage. So yeah, they'll be able to get in touch with somebody local to them as well, and any of our steering group members as well. All their emails are online too.
Perfect, and we can put the links to those documents you spoke about, the guides and whatnot. Well, look, thank you very much for your time. It's been brilliant, and look, I'm very excited. I hope the rain will stay off, but we'll go through anyway. But thank you very much.
Yeah.